Hello and welcome to this critical analysis. It is April 20th, 2026, and exactly 48 hours ago, NASA's Deep Space Network logged an event from the object we call 3I Atlas that has a 0.0001% probability of being a natural occurrence. I am talking about a targeted, sustained interaction with human orbital debris. An interaction that completely defies our current understanding of material physics. Picture this, floating 240 million kilometers away, an object that conventional astronomy classified as an interstellar comet is currently doing the impossible. It is not just colliding with dead satellites. It is actively breaking them down. It is converting aerospace-grade titanium, reinforced aluminum, and synthetic polymers into complex organic compounds. In simpler terms, 3I Atlas is composting our space junk into soil. Think about that for a moment. When you examine the data, the sheer mechanics of this process are staggering. We are looking at a localized breakdown of molecular bonds happening at 1842 UTC, sustained over an exact 23-second interval, precision at tight. That requires control. That requires an intentional manipulation of chemistry on a macroscopic scale. In all my years studying theoretical physics and astrophysics, observing the cosmos through the lenses of our most advanced instruments, I have never seen a mechanism capable of this outside of a biological ecosystem. The numbers are unambiguous. ESA's Gaia spacecraft confirmed the initial telemetry anomaly, showing a rapid deceleration of a defunct Russian weather satellite right as it entered the projected coma of 3I Atlas. But it was not a kinetic impact. The satellite did not shatter. It dissolved within 0.03 degrees of the predicted trajectory. The satellite's metallic signature simply vanished from the radar, replaced by an expanding cloud of carbon-rich prebiotic molecules. Let me put this in perspective. The probability of aerospace metals spontaneously reorganizing into complex organics in the vacuum of space at those temperatures is effectively zero. It is akin to throwing a metal watch into a tornado and expecting it to transform into a living flower. Yet three independent sources, NASA, ESA, and the ALMA array in Chile, have validated this exact phenomenon. What fascinates me about this data is not just what happened, but how it happened. Everyone assumes these rogue interstellar objects are just dead rocks or dirty snowballs wandering through the void. The conventional explanation is that they are remnants of shattered planetary systems. But what if our model is incomplete? What if this object is not just wandering, but actively processing? This should not exist. The physics here breaks down. We are witnessing an object that interacts with artificial human constructs, identifies them, and chemically deconstructs them with surgical precision. The implications are profound, and they challenge every assumption we hold about the nature of the universe. And the most chilling part, that was only the first satellite. To truly grasp the magnitude of what we are witnessing, we must first understand what 3I Atlas actually is. Originally discovered on August 14th and 2025, it was classified as the third interstellar interloper, following Oumuamua and Borisov. But 3I Atlas possessed one key differentiator from the very beginning. Its thermal emission spectrum was impossibly stable. It did not heat up as it approached the inner solar system like a normal comet would. Instead, it maintained an internal core temperature that completely defied our standard thermodynamic models. For months, astrophysicists debated this initial anomaly, trying to force the data into existing paradigms. But nobody predicted what would happen when its trajectory brought it close to Earth's exosphere, an area littered with millions of pieces of metallic space debris. The first undeniable proof of this impossible action arrived on April 18, 2026, at exactly 3:14 UTC, JWST's NIRCam instrument was focused on a dense cluster of orbital junk, specifically a decommissioned piece of the defunct Vanguard program. As 3I Atlas passed within 4,000 kilometers of this debris field, the object exhibited a behavior with no precedent in astrophysics. It extended a visible filament of charged luminescent particles, not a random flare, not a gravitational disruption, a targeted, coherent electromagnetic tendril. Wait until you hear what happened next. The telemetry data from JWST showed the internal temperature of the dead satellite spiking to 3,400 Kelvin for precisely 1.4 seconds. Then, the temperature dropped back to near absolute zero almost instantaneously. When the thermal flash subsided, the 14-kilogram aluminum structure was completely gone. In its place, a localized, expanding cloud of complex hydrocarbons, rich silicates, and frozen amino acids. And in simpler terms, it had been turned into highly fertile cosmic soil. NASA's Near-Earth Object Observations Program detected this rapid mass conversion using their advanced ground-based radar systems. ESA's Columbus Control Center independently verified the sudden isotopic shift using their orbital mass spectrometers. The Keck Observatory in Hawaii cross-referenced the optical disappearance using adaptive optics. Same result. 3 independent sources, different methodologies, identical conclusion. The numbers don't lie. We are not talking about a high-speed kinetic collision that merely pulverized the satellite into microscopic dust. We are talking about molecular transmutation on a macroscopic scale. The physics here is intriguing because, from a quantum perspective, rearranging solid aluminum and titanium into organic carbon-based compounds requires a targeted injection of energy so precise that it breaks specific atomic bonds without triggering a runaway nuclear reaction. Think of it like trying to dismantle an entire skyscraper by carefully removing one specific brick at a time, but doing it in a fraction of a second from hundreds of miles away. It requires an understanding of material composition that we simply do not possess. Pause and realize what this means. But that was just the beginning of the sequence. First, the Vanguard debris was dismantled at 3:14 UTC, and then, less than 4 hours later, at 7:02 UTC, a cluster of 7 defunct Starlink satellites that had been decommissioned due to solar storm damage underwent the exact same chemical process. By April 19th, Anomaly 3 occurred. A massive 33-ton discarded Delta IV upper stage rocket body was converted into an expanding ring of biological precursor dust, each event more impossible than the last. Each transmutation executing faster and with higher energetic efficiency. Right now, as I am speaking, we are tracking over 47 distinct instances of this targeted decomposition across our orbital sphere. Think about the precision required here. To convert tons of space junk into biological building blocks, the object must be analyzing the atomic structure of each satellite before initiating the pulse. Spectroscopy shows metallic signatures, elements like titanium, beryllium, and Kevlar that shouldn't exist in this temperature regime being ripped apart at the subatomic level. And it is happening within a tolerance of 0.01 degrees of accuracy every time 3 Atlas emits this pulse. The resulting organic cloud matches the exact chemical composition of carbonaceous chondrites, the very meteors that scientists believe brought the seeds of life to early Earth. This should not be possible. The physics of transforming refined artificial human metals into prebiotic space soil defies every law of thermodynamics we teach. When you examine the data, the energy required to force these endothermic reactions is immense. Yet 3I Atlas shows no signs of thermal exhaust. It is as if the object is absorbing the kinetic energy of the satellite and using it to power the chemical reconstruction. It is performing alchemy across the vacuum of open space. And that's just the beginning, because what NASA's advanced telemetry instruments detected during the next orbital pass proves that 3I Atlas is not just reacting to our human-made satellites blindly, it is making deliberate, incredibly precise choices before devouring them entirely. And then, on April 19, 2026, at exactly 22:14 UTC, something changed. NASA's Deep Space Network Antenna DSS-43 in Australia detected new impossible data. Up until this exact millisecond, 3I Atlas had been indiscriminately processing whatever metallic debris crossed its immediate path. But this was not in the models. This was not predicted. This changes everything. The object suddenly altered its own rotation axis by a massive 14.2 degrees. It deliberately bypassed a cluster of perfectly accessible, highly reflective titanium debris from an old weather satellite. Instead, it aligned its trajectory towards something entirely different. Consider the implications. It was targeting specific isotopic signatures. It approached a dense sphere of military-grade tungsten, the remnants of a classified 1990s orbital test, and initiated a completely different frequency of electromagnetic breakdown. Wait, a different frequency. Impossible, but confirmed 3 times. Picture this scenario. Imagine a massive dark silhouette against the backdrop of the Milky Way, firing a beam of pure, coherent energy, not just to melt a metal, but to meticulously rearrange its atomic structure based on what kind of metal it is. From Earth's perspective, this looks like a celestial forge operating with terrifying intent. Hubble's Wide Field Camera 3 captured the optical data. The tungsten didn't just turn into carbon dust, and it was synthesized into complex, long-chain amino acids. Let me quantify this. The probability of an interstellar comet randomly emitting an electromagnetic tendril, perhaps 0.0001%, the probability of it selectively distinguishing between aluminum, titanium, and tungsten in a vacuum, 0.00005%, both occurring in the same object, reacting with that level of chemical precision. 1 in 8.4 trillion. That's like dealing a royal flush in poker 1,000 times in a row while blindfolded. In 4 million years of cometary observation, we've never seen this combination. The numbers are definitive. 99.8% of known comets behave strictly according to Kepler's laws and basic thermodynamics. They melt, they outgas, they break apart. They do not analyze their environment and run complex chemical synthesis algorithms. When you examine the data from a quantum perspective, the physics here is intriguing because it violates the fundamental conservation of energy as we currently understand it in astrophysics, transforming solid tungsten into biological precursors. Requires localized temperatures exceeding 6,000 Kelvin to break the nuclear bonds. Yet, ALMA's Band 7 receivers in Chile measured the ambient temperature around 3I Atlas during the transformation. The reading, a completely stable 4 Kelvin. It is absolute freezing. Think of it like boiling a pot of water on a stove, but the stove is covered in thick ice that never melts. In simpler terms, the energy being used to dismantle these satellites is being contained within an invisible, perfectly insulated quantum bubble. There's no natural explanation yet. The conventional explanation is that perhaps hypervelocity microimpacts are causing localized plasma flares. But what if our model is incomplete? What if we are looking at a localized manipulation of the strong nuclear force. To achieve an energetic transfer with zero thermal leakage into the surrounding vacuum implies a mastery of physics that humanity is centuries away from theorizing, let alone engineering. Even the director of ESA's Near-Earth Object Coordination Center, who has spent 35 years mapping orbital mechanics and space debris, said the telemetry from this event is the most terrifyingly beautiful violation of physics ever recorded. When someone at that level openly questions the laws of thermodynamics, when the European Space Agency enacts an emergency protocol to completely alter the orbits of their active Galileo satellites to avoid this object, so we need to pay very close attention. Hold on, it gets worse, because it is not just what 3I Atlas is destroying. It is about what it is building from the wreckage. Everyone assumes that composting space junk into organic soil is just a random byproduct of some bizarre cosmic radiation, and the data suggests otherwise. When you look at the expanding clouds of organic matter left in the wake of these destroyed satellites, they are not dispersing into the solar wind. Gravity and radiation pressure should blow this dust away almost instantly, but they aren't. JWST's NRCam instrument shows the prebiotic molecules are artificially coagulating. They are sticking together. They are forming geometric structures. 3 independent sources validated this. NASA confirmed the coagulation at 2345 UTC. ESA's orbital sensors matched the density readings. The Keck Observatory mapped the geometric spread. 3 sources, different methods, identical conclusion. The question that keeps me thinking is, why? Why is an object from outside our solar system cleaning up our planetary orbit and replacing it with the chemical building blocks of life? But what I'm about to show you, this is the data that prompted an emergency classified briefing at the Pentagon just 12 hours ago. Because what 3 Atlas did to the last satellite changes the fate of our entire planet. Everything I've shown you, the 47 target anomalies, the 1 in 8.4 trillion statistical impossibilities, the profound authority concerns from ESA, all of this was meticulously documented by the morning of April 20th. But we're not done. On April 20th, 2026, at exactly 14:03 UTC, NASA's orbital tracking team detected something else, something not in any prior telemetry data, something that wasn't supposed to exist anywhere in the natural cosmos. COMPOSTED Atlas intercepted the massive upper stage of an old Atlas V rocket, but this time it didn't just break the 4,500 kilogram metallic cylinder down into an organic dust cloud. As the titanium dissolved, the newly formed prebiotic molecules did not just coagulate, they began to emit a coherent electromagnetic signal at a precise frequency of 2.38 gigahertz. The signal repeated Earth's historic 1974 erasable message back to us, but with terrifying modifications. Let that sink in. When you examine the data, the structural diagram of human DNA encoded in the original message had been deliberately altered. The atomic numbers for our essential life elements, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus, were changed. The object mathematically mapped a completely new biological blueprint into the radio waves, transmitting it back to Earth within a 0.505 millisecond tolerance. Think of it like sending someone a recipe for a cake, and they send back a modified recipe that bakes an entirely different, previously unimaginable dessert. Except here, the recipe is the fundamental genetic code for carbon-based life. If this is a natural, bizarre, quantum echo of our own terrestrial radio frequencies bouncing off organic dust, then our entire understanding of radio wave propagation is fundamentally broken. If this is an automated response mechanism triggered by processing human alloys, then we are dealing with highly advanced, autonomous extraterrestrial technology. But here's what keeps astrophysicists awake. If this object is actively analyzing our orbital garbage, deciphering our biological makeup through our old space probes, and transmitting a heavily modified genetic blueprint back to us, and then this is not just an interstellar comet, it is a biological forge, and the newly assembled organic soil is its canvas. Within precisely 3 hours of this signal reception, NASA did something absolutely unprecedented. They severed all public access to the Deep Space Network's live telemetry feeds and initiated a Level 1 classified data blackout. In 68 years of modern astrophysical observation, that has happened exactly 0 times for a cometary body. That alone tells you the magnitude of what we're dealing with. And we're not finished, because the data I'm about to show you in the final section, this is where it gets truly inexplicable. Let's establish what we know with absolute certainty. -3 3-eyed Atlas is actively converting metallic human space debris into complex prebiotic organic soil. We know the statistical probability of this selective chemical transmutation occurring naturally is 1 in 8.4 trillion. We know 3 independent authorities, NASA, ESA, and the ALMA Array, have verified this and subsequently initiated a Level 1 classified data blackout. And we know its most recent action was broadcasting a deliberately modified human DNA sequence encoded in a 2.38 gigahertz radio pulse. These are not theories. These are documented observations. But one question remains unanswered. One question that NASA's classified briefing carefully avoids: why this object is replacing our orbital graveyard with the building blocks of a new biological ecosystem. Because the answer determines everything. If this is an automated, bizarre cosmic phenomenon, then our understanding of quantum chemistry and thermodynamics is fundamentally broken, and a new era of physics must be written. If this is an autonomous terraforming probe sent by an intelligence, then humanity is no longer the apex engineer of this solar system. And if this object is preparing Earth's orbit for something else to arrive, creating a biological foundation from our own discarded technology, then we are watching the first stages of an interstellar cosmic overwrite. There is no middle ground. One of these is our reality, and the clock is running. Right now, as you watch this, the James Webb Space Telescope and the Deep Space Network are locked on to its trajectory. Every hour brings new, highly classified observations. In precisely 72 hours, 3i Atlas will intersect with the densest ring of our geosynchronous satellite graveyard, an area containing over 3,000 dead metallic targets. The telescopes are pointed, the detectors are live, the data stream is active. Sun Atlas is actively dismantling our history. The signal is ongoing, and whatever is trying to communicate, and Earth is listening